Most of the beginning of the story actually happened in the Jupiter branch of Rizal Bank in the Philippines. And there was a corrupt banking center manager. We have her picture there. She ended up, getting convicted and sentenced to over 50 years in prison. There were some other employees within the banking center that were assisting her. And then there was a whole group of people at RBC Corporate. In particular, there was the treasurer, who would have been the number two person in Rizal Bank, and the president, who were involved in the decisioning. And there was criticism of them. And then there was also operations teams, legal, lawyers, risk, and that sort of thing that were looking at this. Uh, Much of the interesting part of the story, from my perspective, is not what happened in the banking center, but what happened at the corporate level. Because all banks everywhere around the world, like forever, have always had to deal with the problem of rogue employees. I mean, embezzlements from banks by employees or bad loans or whatever is a perpetual problem for banks. And so they set up all their controls on it. You could have, in many cases, a rogue banking center employee or rogue manager, and the controls at the corporate level are designed to detect that. Here, I think the story is going to show that the corporate controls collapsed from in this particular instance, or at least didn't operate as quickly as they should have, and that allowed the money to go forward. Um, and the main area that the litigation is looking at right now was, as the money was coming into Rizal Bank, uh, the operations department placed a freeze on the money almost right away, just like they did in Sri Lanka. So while it wasn't instant, it was the same evening and just a few hours after the money came in. That would have stopped most of the money from leaving. But the treasurer of Rizal Bank, who was a very senior person, released the hold and then was involved in decisioning after that. And a lot of the questions that are occurring in subsequent litigation was, why did that treasurer allow the money to continue? Why didn't that treasurer investigate more carefully? And the story has yet to conclude, but there is litigation in New York between Bangladesh Bank and Rizal Bank and several other people on that very issue. And it's a disputed issue, but it's also very much, I think, the basis for this case study is, given the facts, what should a reasonable bank do?
Right. Yes. And I'm sure that there are many things that banks can learn from this case. But I think that it's also a challenge when an organization like Rizal, there are multiple people who are at it, um, you know, helping each other with the fraud. And then, as we know from this part of the story, where their operations did flag the remittance, but again, it wasn't effective.
I agree with that to a point. So if this only occurred in the banking center, and perhaps with lower dollars, it could have been confined there. Then you have a situation where it's a rogue employee. I think what distinguishes this case from your traditional rogue employee situation is the fact that, number one, it did get frozen. So it wasn't a situation where no one realized what was going on. And it did get escalated. And there were senior corporate officers at Rizal that did look at it. And they made the decision to release the hold. So I'd say from my perspective, the interesting issue is what does a bank do when you have a large amount of money that's coming in like this and it does reach the corporate level? At what point do you just simply say, I'm going to stop everything and I'm truly going to understand the facts before I let this money leave my bank?
Yeah, exactly.